Yemen Today TV marks a decade of moderate media speech against sectarian Houthis. The United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres urges the countries of the world to work for the peace and stop violence. On the eve of celebrating the new year, the suffering of Yemeni children continues to remain forgotten. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I'm Abir Ali and you're watching the English news. Since day one of launching, Yemen Today TV has adopted a national, republic and moderate media speech inside the country and to the Arab world. Such a moderate speech was meant to uncover the ugly and racist Houthi sectarian rhetoric. This report gives more details.
The popular uprisings in the face of the Houthi militia took a more serious and firm path, following a speech addressed by the leader Ali Abdullah Saleh to the masses via Yemen Today channel, in which he called for an uprising against the militia in victory for the revolution and the republic, and in order to preserve the history of the Yemeni people. The historic call on the 2nd of December was carried to the masses by Yemen Today channel, and not fearing the brutality of the militia that practiced all kinds of oppression and aggression. Yemen Today was there in Hujur, where the tribes continued the march of the popular uprising against the priesthood, and revealed the ugliness of the Houthi aggression that besieged the tribesmen, prevented them from food and water, and targeted women and children with sniper bullets and heavy weapons in a brutal manner that violates all human rights. Also in Al-Bayda and among the Awad tribes, Yemen Today was present there in reporting the facts of what is happening in terms of crimes and violations committed by the Houthi militia against the sons of the tribes who went on in the uprising against the group that Iran created. The uprising and popular discontent continues against the practices of the priestly militia, and Yemen Today among the citizens transmits the truth by sound and image and by honest word, out of belief in the leader's commandments and an affirmation that the uprising continues until the restoration of the state institutions, the restoration of dignity to the Republic of Yemen, and the gains of the revolution and unity.
The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged the countries of the world to work for achieving peace and denounce violence and war.
In 2023 we need peace now more than ever. Peace within and out of fleet. Peace with nature and our climate to build a more sustainable world. Peace in the home so women and girls can live in dignity and safety. Peace on the streets and in our communities with the full protection of all human rights. Peace in our places of worship with respect for each other's beliefs. And peace online, free from hate speech and abuse. In 2023, let's put peace at the heart of our words and actions. Together, let's make 2023 a year when peace is restored to our lives, our homes, and our world.
The British ambassador to Yemen, Richard Oppenheim, has addressed the Yemenis on the occasion of the new year. Oppenheim called on Yemenis to cooperate with the UN-led process and start the political dialogue at once for the welfare of the vulnerable Yemeni people.
كانت السنة 2022 عاماً حافلاً بالأحداث بالنسبة لليمن. هذا يقلقني كثيراً، لكن هناك سبب للأمل. في فبراير زرت اليمن لأول مرة ورأيت بعض التحديات التي يواجهها الناس كل يوم. لقد شاهدت جمال اليمن وإبداع وتصميم وعمل شاب الجاد. أنا متفائل بالمستقبل. لقد أدت الهدنة الهشة وغير الكاملة إلى فوائد حقيقية، من ضمنها وفيات أقل بنسبة 75 من جرى الأنف. قد تصبح هذه الهدنة وقفاً لإطلاق النار، وفي النهاية السلام دائماً. لهذا السبب يجب على جميع الأطراف العمل بشكل بناء. يجب تنفيذ الاتفاقيات القائمة، ويجب الحوثيون اغتنام الفرصة التي أتيحت لهم للانضمام إلى عملية السلام تحت رعاية الأمم المتحدة التي يمكن أن تحقق الاستقرار والأمن والازدهار. اليمن بحاجة إلى السلام، واليمنيون يستحقون السلام. أتمنى للجميع عطلة سعيدة وعام جديد.
While the world is celebrating the new year tonight, millions of Yemeni children continue to suffer from hunger and displacement. At this point, the world should be reminded of the constant suffering of Yemeni children and should act immediately to alleviate their pains. The report has more details.
The world is celebrating New Year's and Christmas, forgetting all about the children and the people of Yemen that continue to suffer every day. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warned in October that the situation in Yemen was still the world's worst humanitarian crisis. According to the World Food Programme, malnutrition rates among women and children in Yemen remain among the highest in the world, as about 1.3 million pregnant and breastfeeding women and 2.2 million children under the age of 5 require acute malnutrition treatment. According to Save the Children, an estimated 85,000 children under the age of 5 may have died from extreme hunger since April 2015. Children, women, and girls have a very hard time accessing healthcare services. In addition, more than 20.1 million people out of 30.5 million struggle to have access to health services. This is all happening due to the conflict in Yemen, which makes it very hard for people to reach healthcare centers. The current level of hunger in Yemen is unprecedented and is causing severe hardship for millions of people. 16.2 million Yemenis are food insecure, and over 5 million people in Yemen are on the brink of famine, as the conflict and economic decline have left families struggling to find enough food to get through the day. It's important to remind the world what they seem to have forgotten, which is the suffering of the people of Yemen from poverty, hunger, and violations of human rights committed by the Houthis. The world needs to understand the serious situation of Yemen and the deep suffering of the Yemeni people.
An Emirati newspaper said the obstructing of progress of peace negotiations in Yemen increases the number of those affected by its scourge. The Emirati newspaper confirmed in its editorial that the time has come for peace to return to Yemen, to end the war and sit at the negotiation table. They pointed out that establishing peace in Yemen requires both parties to sit at the negotiating table without impossible conditions by the Houthi side. Reporters Without Borders revealed that 1,668 journalists were killed in the war between 2003 and 2022. The report said with a total of 578 journalists killed over 20 years, Iraq and Syria alone recorded the death of more than a third of the correspondents, with more than 95% of those killed being men. Many civil servants in Houthi-controlled areas were deprived from getting their half salary that they get every 4 months. The rebels justified that move by saying those civil workers adopted positions against them. Such a thing caused wide anger among Yemenis and could pave the way to a popular uprising against the rebels. This report has more.
Looting, suppression, and the dismissal of employees in areas under the control of the Iran-backed Houthi militia. Recently, the civil service under the authority of the Houthi militia in Sana'a has suspended the salaries of hundreds of employees in many government institutions and facilities, including dozens of journalists and technicians in media institutions. Employees claimed that they were shocked to find no alerts from the bank indicating that their wages had been transferred to their accounts when they went to pick up their paychecks. Later, they learned that the civil service had stopped paying them, but was depositing funds as usual to the accounts of other employees whose viewpoints did not conflict with the Houthi regime. Workers whose salaries were suspended considered their exclusion from the exchange process a form of collective punishment through which the militia seeks to subjugate their opponents. Activists on social networking sites circulated lists that included the names of dozens of loyalist employees and journalists who received their salaries despite joining the workforce not long ago. Meanwhile, many employees who have labored for decades within the workforce had their wages cut off despite their seniority. authority. It is noteworthy that the civil service, which is under the authority of the militia in Sana'a, has dismissed hundreds of employees during the past period and dropped their names from the payroll. This was done under the pretense of protecting the state from aggressors, with the Houthi forces citing allegations that allow them to replace opponents with loyalists. Since taking the capital Sana'a by force, the systematic looting of wages and job positions has been heavily reinforced. These Houthi-led campaigns include abruptly and illegally firing employees and replacing them with loyalists to the Iranian regime.
Coming up in the news, the world bid farewell to the Brazilian legend football Pelé.
طبعا المعاناة شديدة في هذا الطريق، معاناة شديدة كانت قبل الرص، والمسمى بالفعل بأنه طريق الموت.
كنا نعاني من هذه الطريق، كان طريق صعب وكنا نمشي على الأقدام وننقل مواد غذائية بالحمير.
إذا جت الأمطار، إذا جاء موسم الأمطار تنقطع الطريق بشكل نهائي، لأن المنطقة وعرة وجبلية ما فيها ماء شرب. الماء للوايت يكلف الشخص من عام إلى هنا إلى 50,000 إلى 60,000 من وعورة الطريق.
تم نزولنا مباشرة إلى المنطقة المستهدفة وتأكدنا من يعني وعورة الطريق وأنهم بحاجة ماسة إلى رصف الطريق وبناء جدران ساندة، كون الطريق ضيقة ووعرة.
الآن ولله الحمد بعد رص الطريق أصبح المعاناة أخف من الأول. نقلنا المسمى من مسمى الموت إلى مسمى طريق السلامة.
Welcome back. The legend Brazilian footballer Pelé died at the age of 82 after a long battle with cancer. The late Pelé was regarded as one of the best football players that the game has ever seen in this century. This report has more.
The Brazilian king of football has died at the age of 82. Edison Arantes, who was named after the American inventor Thomas Edison, who was known as Pelé to the world. He grew up in a poor neighborhood, earning money through shining shoes and spending his free time playing football barefoot with his friends. Who knew that this would turn him into one of the greatest football players in the world? In the 1958 World Cup, Pelé was regarded as the youngest player to compete at the tournament. Pelé won a record of 3 World Cups and became one of the most powerful sports figures of the last century. Before Pelé, 10 was just a number that no one really cared about. Now, 10 is a very special number in Brazil that inspires many. The 3-time World Cup winner has inspired many in Brazil and all over the world. He wasn't only an icon in football, but in retirement he spent a significant amount of time supporting United Nations Children's Fund, fighting child poverty and promoting peace. A beautiful spirit who did so much, even after the end of his football career. In recent years, Pelé has been suffering from a series of medical issues. He has been battling cancer and spent Christmas in the hospital, receiving treatment for cardiac and renal failure. December 29, 2022, just before the new year, the world loses the king of football, Pelé.
My ambition is to make people happy.
Well, you've done that all your life.
I tried.
So thank you very, very much.
My
Pelé.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Interested in football or not, Pelé is known to everyone, and today the world pays tribute to the death of the Black Pearl.
The Yemen Foundation for Training, in partnership with the Saudi Program for Reconstruction, organized an honoring ceremony for the graduates in Aden. This came in an attempt to building the future of Yemeni youth project for 83 young men and women by the Self-Employment Bath Program. The program targeted 687 young men and women within 3 tracks that included training for the purpose of employment, self-employment, and work paths. The Ministry of Higher Education announced that the start of transferring and sending financial dues to the students abroad. The Undersecretary of the Ministry of Higher Education explained that the ministry has completed transferring the dues to students on scholarships to study abroad for the first quarter of the year 2022. Students usually have their grants delayed for months, a thing that makes them suffer with their families as they depend wholly on those grants.
من البيت للمدرسة حوالي 45 دقيقة، نمشي سريع عشان نلحق الإذاعة المدرسية، وأكبر معاناة لي الآن هي تأخير الراتب.
وبالرغم من ظروف البلاد والحرب والوضع، بس احنا نكافح عشان التعليم. هدفنا الوحيد هو التعليم ويخرج جيل صالح مسلح بالعلم.
يعني اللي أثر فيه بأنني لم ما أشتي الطلاب القرية يدرسوا ويتعلموا، وعلشان المشروع يستمر ويكون لغيري من المعلمات.
During the year 2022, the exchange rate of the national currency witnessed a state of fluctuation against foreign currencies. The rial ended the year recording 1,200 rials against the dollar, compared to 1,020 rials per dollar at the beginning of the year. The government tried to keep the value of the national currency at safe levels, but these efforts were met with great challenges. Sheikh Khalifa Charity Foundation is to provide support to the key hospital in Shabwa Governorate. Such a step comes while the health sector in Yemen lacks severe facilities due to the war. This report has more.
Under a massive healthcare effort, the UAE will assist in the recruitment of doctors and the delivery of critical supplies to hospitals in Yemen. The Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan Foundation is leading the humanitarian effort to improve healthcare services for Yemenis in Shabwa Governorate. The initiative is being carried out on President Sheikh Mohammed's orders. The project entails repairing, upgrading, and supplying Shabwa hospitals with medical supplies, as well as staffing them with doctors and experts to ensure their smooth functioning and proper healthcare services to the Yemeni people. Work on the project will begin in 2 phases. The first will consist of equipping and restoring 4 essential hospitals that are a priority for the people, followed by the second phase, which will include 12 more hospitals in various Shabwa districts. The Assistant Undersecretary of the Shabwa Governorate emphasized the relevance of the initiative in assisting the health sector. He expressed gratitude to the Khalifa Foundation, the Emirates humanitarian arm. Many Yemeni leaders and citizens attended the project's inauguration event. Over the years, the UAE has affirmed its commitment to providing Yemenis with basic health care. The Emirates Red Crescent's mobile clinic in Yemen's Hadramaut province has served over 16,000 individuals. In July, the clinic, which offers free medical treatment and medication to those who live in remote places, assisted 543 people. Over 15,700 patients have reportedly benefited from the clinic's services, according to the medical team's supervisor. The clinic is a part of the UAE's humanitarian initiatives to lessen the suffering of the Yemeni people and provide treatment in remote locations. The Emirati Red Crescent said in March that its Ramadan programs in the Yemeni governorates of Shabwa, Hadramaut, Taiz, Hodeidah, Aden, and Socotra had impacted more than 7 million people. In April, clothing, food, and other forms of humanitarian relief were dispersed in time for Ramadan. Since 2015, Yemen has received more than $6.3 billion in help from the UAE.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Yemen Today TV marks a decade of moderate media speech against sectarian Houthis. The United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres urges the countries of the world to work for peace and stop violence. On the eve of celebrating the new year, the suffering of Yemeni children continues to remain forgotten. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali. Happy New Year and thank you for watching.